Here we go. Everyday Supernatural, part 8, I think. This is the point where Everyday Supernatural gets a bit gritty, I think it would be fair to say. Because I think it might seem, relatively easy thinking about full-on faith when life is good and the sun is shining in your life. Everything is how you would expect it to be. But what about adversity or hardship? What about illness? What about the times in our life when our health seems limited? Life is off kilter and out of balance. It's difficult. We feel physically, mentally, emotionally diminished or even endangered. Our life is at risk. We are still called to live everyday supernatural lives. And that's what we're going to be thinking about today. And in that place, we're going to be remembering some things. In fact, one of the first ways that God wanted us to know him, as we find it early on in the pages of the Bible. I don't know about you, but when my life gets a bit like that, I know I can too quickly, lose some sense of perspective. I can get a bit disorientated. And when life is disorientating, I think we quickly feel we've got more questions than answers. One of the questions that I have, the things that I need to ask, and one of the things that I think we can help each other with when we see that life has got tricky, is this question, where is God? Where is God in this? It's a curious thing, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed that some of the people who aren't sure if God's there at all can be absolutely certain that he's not there when life is hardest of all. They seem to have the most faith about him being absent than they do about him being present. But in some way, I think all of us will wonder, where is God in our disaster days when we most obviously need help and healing? The unexpected has happened. Life has changed dramatically. And we're left wondering if it will ever be the same again. Even when, sometimes most stuff is largely the same. It's just that it feels like everything has changed so much. Unwelcome, nasty stuff has barged into our lives. And now it seems like it's a completely different world. We're left with a sense that something significant has been lost. We can be left wondering, is what I thought was true before, is that still true now? I thought I knew something about God, about where he was in my life before, but where is he now? What in this situation, in this circumstance, is God present at all in this world? In my life like this? Is the one who created my life, my world, still here? I think just like anyone who hasn't been entirely certain before about God, but thinks they're sure, they're definitely not going to believe, each of us needs something to help us discover God. He's always present with us. Because he is. Even if it is just that, actually, he's like the sun shining above the clouds. He is there somehow. I don't know if I can see him in this, but he is still present in our lives. He is still working in our world, watching over us and involved with our lives, active in every way. I think our first step in healing is the one where we decide if we're going to give up on God and turn our back on him in that, or back off, or else look to God and keep expectant to him. Expectant that even in this, that I don't want, that I wish didn't happen, I think I could go deeper in God. I could be closer and stronger with God, even in this situation. So I think a first step in sharing healing with anyone is not giving up or backing off of them. Oh, that's a bit awkward. Not quite sure what to say to you about that. Sorry about that. A first step is wanting to help them see God with them. Absolutely key. God is with you, even in this. Of course, no one needs a lot of cold theory in their worst days, do they? They need kindness. No one needs, they probably need more practical help than preachiness. We need something. We need to know that God's there. What can we do? I wonder if we can dare to wonder if or how this might be a time for them getting closer to God too, even in this adversity. So if we're prepared to believe maybe God is still here, maybe he is still who he said he is, I think probably the next thing we're going to ask is, well, what's he doing then? I mean, he's here, right? But so does he care? I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's all too easy to sort of join the dots in our lives and see that, okay, so God is present and this is happening that I don't want to happen. Therefore, God is doing it. It's all God's fault. This has happened in my life or in this situation or in that circumstance in my family, or it's all God's fault. The thing is, the Bible tells us that God is not to blame for sickness, for ill health, for poor mental or emotional well-being, or death. All of that came into the world by the choices and actions of humanity. This is we understand as the Bible tells us, God's story. The result of that was devastating for all of us. Even though, a newborn baby looks a picture of innocence, once upon a time, you all did too. We're all permanently actually tainted and stained by this in ways that the Bible calls sin. And it explains that we are powerless to change. We've sung something of that already this morning. But what the Bible tells us is that incredibly and amazingly, in Jesus' death and resurrection, God rescues us from sin. He rescues us from sickness and death. He brings us into everlasting life. Get that? We join that dot. God did it. Actually, the dots we join is that Jesus rescued us from a mess of our own making, for something that we were responsible to sort out and couldn't. So Jesus did. That is the incredible good news of the Bible. So yes, he does care. Is he doing something? He's already started doing stuff. In fact, he's done most of it already. We're just living in a sort of mop-up period of history where the fullness of all that he's done at the cross will be worked out. Yes, he cares for you very, very much. I want to live like that. I want to live like I believe that's true for me, that it's true for us, that it's true for other people too. I hope in every way possible, people who meet you, who meet us, they glimpse somehow that God is there and that he cares. Really important. Well done if you made it that far through my little questions and my thinking. So far we said God is here and he cares. But at this point, it's very understandable. It's quite common, in fact, to wonder, well, all right, yeah, no, okay. Yeah, I like the sound of that. But why doesn't he get on and act a bit sooner? He's here, he's God. He's able to do whatever he likes. He cares. Shouldn't he show that? Shouldn't he do it, a little bit more? I have talked to him about this, We can feel all that. It seems a pretty understandable question to me. And I imagine even if you haven't asked it yourself, I have, that you could see why someone would ask that kind of question of how God acts. But I think what I would recognize is that even though I've asked the question myself, I think I've done so assuming that I know better than God what he should be doing and when. I'd still tell you, I'd still hold the theory, oh yeah, God is good and he's kind and he's perfect and, he's the Lord of time and he's in charge of all things and he's ordering history. But when I'm asking that question, if I'm brutally honest with myself, it's because I'm suspicious there's probably not a good enough reason for why he hasn't done something that I think he should have got around to by now. And there's there's not a good enough reason why his help and his healing hasn't happened before now. And honestly, when I'm asking God that question, I'm expecting to highlight some sort of heavenly mistake. The response I'm expecting from God is like, thanks, Steve. Yeah, no, that's right. I am good. I did want to do that, and I've been ever so busy. There's been a pandemic and stuff. And to say, I will write onto it this time tomorrow. That's the kind of answer. Oh, I'm sorry for the delay. I thought I told the angels to get on with that. Foolishly, I'm expecting something like some sort of heavenly mistake, some sort of oversight. My confession is I'm never expecting a satisfactory answer from God to that question. I'm doubting God. Maybe you can relate to my doubts. I think, hold on a minute, God, if you're God, you should have come through on that by now. I can see that when I'm relating to God like this, I guess you could say I'm treating him like some kind of fixer. And frankly, I'm treating him like a fixer I've stopped trusting, haven't I? But God isn't a fixer. God is a storyteller. That's more who he is. I might prefer him to fix my life, to change some circumstances, to make some things go away, stuff not to happen, to stop happening. But being a Jesus follower is choosing to see my life as his story and to live that story with him in every situation and for him in every situation. When we ask God about our lives, when we come to him for help and healing, we want his rescue. We don't pray in some sort of vacuum where we sort of, here's our life and here's what I'm doing, everything I want, and let me just step out of that minute. Right, here's the stuff, God. Before I get back to it all, could you just this, and this? Asking God, praying is fundamentally connected with every other way that we live. So prayer interlocks with what we do, the way that we trust God, the way that we love him and anybody else, our giving, our waiting, our enduring. Prayer is fundamentally linked to our celebrating and even our suffering in him, because everything tells his story supernaturally in every way, every day, supernatural. I recognize that in health and in hardship, I've got a choice. I have a choice to keep trusting God, his actions, his apparent inactions, and his timing, even when I don't have answers. To be honest, that's probably the time the choice is most real. The trust is most genuine. If I feel I've got the answers, am I really trusting him or, my ability to reason it out? If we remember this too, when we are relating to other people, we will avoid some painful pitholes. The things like unfairly asking them to answer for God about their circumstances. Oh, well, why do you think that's happened in your life? You have been praying and reading your Bible lately, haven't you? Don't you have enough faith for that? We will avoid the pitfall of or even attempting to unhelpfully offer our own answers for God. Well, I know why God doesn't do that sort of thing sometimes. We don't do that. We're not called to answer on God's behalf. It's tough, though, isn't it? These are tough things. I'm here to talk about healing, and I recognize so far it's quite a sobering kind of thing I'm talking about. I don't want to offer you some sort of triumphalistic rah-rah thing at this. I want to speak to you from the reality of our lives to the truth of who God is, who he always is. So just in case you're thinking this is a light and easy talk, I want to get to the hardest bit. When time has run out, and in those moments when we are wondering, not why doesn't God heal, why didn't God heal? See, as Christians, we believe all healing comes from God, whether that is what it seems natural or it appears miraculous. In Acts 3:15, Jesus is rightly called the author of life. That's all of life. He gives life. In Psalm 90, verse 12, the psalmist rightly declares that he numbers all of our days. He is the way, the truth, and life. He's all over this. Until, well, it seems like he wasn't all over it. Most often, it seems like he wasn't too when we assume about healing that God has to do something physical now, or else he isn't doing anything. I've definitely been there. And while we tend to focus on our present experience of health and well-being, on physical health, we often think, right now, what is God doing now? Okay, nothing. Oh, well, I knew he didn't like me. The Bible has a sense of healing. It has a term for who God is and how he wants to act in healing. There's probably not an equivalent term, so I don't want to get all technical on you. Bear with me in this. There's a term in the Bible called shalom. It's about God's work in our life that is ultimate and total. Biblical healing includes memories and relationships. It includes well-being and emotions, our body and mind, our spirit. Biblical healing includes disappointments and past hurts. Biblical healing reaches to future hopes and our eternal destiny. Shalom. It's ultimate and complete. Healing is a sign and a wonder of God's kingdom. It's a demonstration of his love. Listen carefully. It is not a mark of your or my goodness. Please don't think that. It's not a mark of any sick person's deserving or otherwise. Neither is it entirely a matter of what we think God is doing or supposed to do. Watch out in case you spend your whole life thinking about what God could do and then forget to think about what you could do. As Jesus followers, we could recognize and respond to God, who he is. Everything we do, every day, supernaturally, including around health and healing. It says something about who we really believe God is and whether or not we trust him. From the early pages of the Bible, God is speaking about who he is. There are times when he uses special names to say something else about his character and how we should know him, to describe himself. How do you in just a few words, say who God is? Well, straight out of the blocks, God is speaking, saying, I'm creator. We find it in Genesis at the beginning of the Bible. And just a few pages later, he's speaking about being almighty. He is, in other words, he's powerful. Creator, he's powerful. Again, in Genesis and Exodus, he's speaking about being ultimate. He is Lord. He is sovereign. He is incredible. Again, he's speaking about being Jireh. He's provider. That's who God is. He is our identity. They have this term, the Lord your banner. He's our identity. He's the one who calls us together, gives us a purpose and something in life. He speaks, we find early on again in these pages with just these amazing images of who God is as the one who sees us. He sees a woman called Hagar. She's kind of like a supporting character in the plot. In life, she had very little status. She was badly treated by everybody else. And God speaks to her and says, I am your seer. I've seen that injustice. I see who you are. He's the one who sees us. But he doesn't just watch in that. The next thing he says to us in Exodus 15:26, this is my text for the morning. I haven't read from the Bible yet. This is a Bible-based talk. My text from the morning is 2 words from Exodus 16:26. It's who God says he is to us. Your healer. Your healer. Whatever your story is, however you respond to it, that remains the truth of who God is. He is your healer. And we live with that across everything that our life may be. I don't know what your life is. My life's a whole mix of things. Great sometimes, a bit rubbish other times. Part of our story, Carol and myself, is that God didn't heal us so that we could have our own birth children. Your healer. Instead, we adopted 3 children. And our second one, James, died after a stroke just before his 5th birthday. Your healer. Another part of our story is that after arthritis had slowly and painfully put me in a wheelchair, 7 years ago, Jesus quite suddenly and unexpectedly got me back out of the wheelchair. Your healer. I don't know what you do with your life. I overthink nearly everything. Okay? That's just me. I'm working on it. But I wonder if, as you hear those edited highlights of some things in my life, whether you can spot something tricky about those contrasting experiences of your healer. How do I live with the tension of that? One day I will meet my Maker, as Sue has done. With all of these experiences, and I quite expect some more, that may be equally as complicated. And the Bible tells me on that day I will give an account for my life, in which I will answer for whether or not I have lived like God is who he says he is. Your healer. Steve, I'm your healer. Right. I'll give an account for my prayers and my actions, not his responses. On that day. Neither am I expecting on that day God to answer whether or not he did what I wanted or expected. So I've got a little strategy for that. Here's what I do. I've been talking to him about it now. It seems like a good idea. I highly recommend it. I recommend it because my story is that I'm not going to back off of God, whatever my life has been. I'm not going to back off from God. Whatever I didn't want, whatever I don't understand, whatever I will feel deeply for the rest of my life, I want to know him closer and deeper and stronger. I want to know him whose word says to me, I am your healer. Whether or not I can quite figure that out, whether or not I can top that up from my life experience. Unanswered questions are very likely to remain, it seems. Even if I manage to stop overthinking my life, and let's pray that I do. Those tensions may exist until Jesus comes again. Until Jesus comes again, making all things new. Until your healer brings the fullness of his healing. Until the shalom that he's told us about, the shalom that he brought as he walked the earth, the shalom that he secured as he died and rose again, is finally rolled out in the culmination of all history. One day we will know fully. Now we only know in part. But we still live before our healer. I recommend you keep talking to God about it. I recommend it to you. I'm taking time to say that to you today because I know I needed encouragement of friends to help me keep looking to God as my healer when I didn't know what else I was going to say to him about James. Life is like that. That's what the church can be. That's what we long for it to be together, where we live and walk through these things in some way. I needed that. Someone may need that from you. It's who we're called to be. I know how easy it is myself to think, yes, I needed that. I wonder why people haven't. I can do that. What I want to think more is, I needed that. I wonder how I can. And funnily enough, when I'm thinking like that, I find that other people do. Just what I find. Their encouragement to me helped me to become more conscious of who he is. He's my healer. Whatever we think we need, whatever we would like God to fix in our lives, however different we might like our story to be, we actually need Jesus, more of Jesus, most of all, in every circumstance, in every situation. Their encouragement led me back to praying on earth as it is in heaven again, as we are called and taught by Jesus to pray, on earth as it is in heaven. Living every day supernatural is recognizing God's presence. It is about remembering his love and his care. It's trusting his timing. Oh, yes, trusting his timing. Seeing our lives as his story, with or without all the answers. It's knowing him more in our story. Looking to know him, turning to know him, saying, no, I'm not going to back off because of this. I know who God said he is, and I know what I am going to keep believing of him. He's told me I'm your healer. I'm going to live like that. One day I'm going to face him and say, yeah, I tried, God. I live like that. That's who I want you to be. So we're going to respond to God. I'm going to pray. It's difficult to talk about healing without praying about it. Come on, we've got to do that, haven't we? But I want us to respond to God who is present with us. In this moment, I want you to tell God, I'd encourage you to, God, I'm not going to back off from you on this. If there are things where you know you might, even as Tim was sharing in our worship time, oh yeah, everything, but there's areas. You can bring them to God now. Let's do that as we sing together. Let's remember that, I don't want anything to hold us back. We live in quite a cynical and negative culture. Anybody else notice that? Yeah. When we think of God as your healer, don't let your culture define your response. Let his word define it. Let his word define it. Let's come to God. Say, God, I'm not turning back for cynicism. Yeah, I was disappointed in that. You can tell him that. He's not going to be surprised. He did know. Just come to him now. Sing the truth of it. In a moment, we're going to pray.